Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This week, we're starting our epic tour of the SummerSlam anthology. It's the biggest party of the summer. It's about 2 months away, and we are going to be counting down one SummerSlam each week until we get there. We're starting this week with the one that started it all, SummerSlam 1988. Cewsh, when I say SummerSlam, what comes to mind?
The word disappointment. I have this prevailing theory that SummerSlam is the worst pay-per-view any company has ever come up with, and that every single year the main event sucks. I can only think of like 3 times in SummerSlam history, and all of like the coming up on 30 years of SummerSlam, 20 years.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
30. No,
30
we're
years.
old. It's 30.
So that means 27 times they presented a pay-per-view where it's the second biggest one of the year, and the main event fucking sucked. I'm really looking forward to finding out if that's just my paranoia and jaded memories, or if that's actually the case.
The early SummerSlams in particular tend to be really weird. They always seem to feature really weird commentary teams. In this case, the show is called by Gorilla Monsoon and superstar Billy Graham, who Billy Graham, despite being an incredibly charismatic interview, is so damn boring as a commentator. It's unbelievable.
Let me ask you a question right off the top. If they had not shown him on camera and acknowledged that it was Billy Graham, would you have thought it was Dusty Rhodes?
He doesn't really sound that much like Dusty Rhodes. I wish he had Dusty Rhodes' boundless enthusiasm.
That's true. The only time Billy Graham ever gets excited during the show is when he like really wants somebody to take their clothes off really bad, which happens like 3 or 4 times. We're just like, strip him down, get his shirt off. What are you doing?
Dude, nothing gay about that. Going back to the paradox of wrestling being so masculine, but at the same time, yes, we want to see the heel manager get their clothes ripped off.
Literally in the main event, when Jesse Ventura's posing, Billy Graham like starts yelling at him like, "No, Jesse, take your shirt off. Let's see the muscles." It's like, all right, buddy, all right. I'm bi, but even for me, that's like, all right, settle down.
Ooh. Yeah. Other SummerSlam traditions include guys being in major feuds not wrestling each other.
Yes.
Which we'll see with Rick Rude and Jake Roberts tonight. Just kind of random tag matches, 6-man tag matches. It's just indicative of a different booking philosophy for a different era where house show business was still more important than pay-per-views at this point. So even if it was a pay-per-view, they were not necessarily going to give away Jake Roberts versus Rick Rude. You were going to have to buy a ticket to see that.
Yeah. Whenever I think of SummerSlam, it always comes back to what's the feud that would never main event WrestleMania. That's what you'll get to see at SummerSlam, whether it's a tag team feud or like the big star going up a slightly lower level guy than who they'd face at WrestleMania. It's really just like, here's all the stars. They won't be facing who you want to see them be facing, but they'll all be there. I kind of feel like that's the prevailing booking theme for like 30 plus years.
Well, and there wasn't a terribly compelling reason for this show to exist beyond they were adding more pay-per-views so that they could make more money. And they already had the Royal Rumble for the winter. They had WrestleMania in the spring and Survivor Series in the fall. So it made sense to do a summer show. WCW had the Great American Bash, so this was their counter to that. The SummerSlam, because alliteration is always good.
I will say right off the beginning that I think there was always potential for SummerSlam to be a cool show. I just think it needed to be connected to something. Like, the Royal Rumble is connected directly to WrestleMania, right? You win the Rumble, you go to WrestleMania. Survivor Series is sort of its own thing, but it's the start. It's sort of the start of the storylines for WrestleMania season, you know? It feels tethered to something. SummerSlam always just felt kind of like random and out by itself. Like, none of the storylines in SummerSlam, this SummerSlam notwithstanding, because that's not going to be the case, but it never felt connected to anything. That's why I liked, for that super brief period where like the winner of the King of the Ring would get their shot at SummerSlam, because that's a cool thing that I think it could have always used.
Yeah, it at least gave it gave you a storyline to run throughout the summer. And Yeah, I mean, particularly in these early years, this was generally just a filler show. The main event would be a tag match rather than a title defense. For the most part, big feuds wouldn't really get settled. It was just keep things rolling, and they'd kind of blow things off on a Saturday night's main event in the fall.
Yeah. All right. Now that we're done shitting all over SummerSlam, let's cover all the SummerSlams.
Yep. Let's get into it. So the big feud going into this show was the Mega Powers, Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan, against the Mega Bucks, Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase. So, of course, at WrestleMania 4, Randy Savage won the vacant WWF title. He beat Ted DiBiase in the finals of the tournament with Hulk Hogan's help. Hulk helped fend off Andre the Giant, and then also just interfered in the match and hit DiBiase with a chair because Hulk Hogan is a dirty cheater. But Savage won the title, and him and Hogan had their epic handshake that sealed them together as, the most powerful team in wrestling.
Yeah, I didn't watch this live, obviously. I was only like 3 years old. But I definitely remember seeing it on VHSs later on, and how cool the Mega Powers really were. And, there's no way to put into words. There's nobody... It would be like if John Cena and somebody as cool as John Cena were, a tag team who were, really close friends, and it was everything that you could possibly want as a kid, right?
Have they ever done that? They've never really done anything like it again. I mean, I guess sort of Shawn Michaels and Diesel, but that's nothing in comparison.
Yeah, and they had already had an established relationship before Diesel was a big star.
Yeah.
And here, they had just submitted Randy Savage as the champion and the big star. And here's Hogan, who is the hero of every kid, the former big star, and they're best friends. It's exactly what you want as a kid. All your heroes are together in this awesome tag team, and they're going to lay waste to all the heels, and it's amazing. It's fun. Even now, when I'm a jaded 32-year-old man, when I see the Mega Powers in the ring together, it's fun. It's electric.
Yeah, it's just something. I mean, WCW, I feel like, did this a little more often because Dusty Rhodes would kind of book himself with whoever the other top babyface was. But it's something that in the WWF they just don't really do because WWF babyfaces seemingly always have to be loners and can't have any friends.
I always thought that was part of, I wonder how John Cena's history would have been different if they had, found him a buddy at some point. You know what I mean? He never, it seems like main eventers now are never connected to the rest of the
better
roster.
Friends than Crime Time.
Yeah, his 5-minute relationship with Crime Time. That went super well.
CTC.
And it's kind of weird because now we kind of have something like that with the Shield where all the main eventers are kind of from the same stable and they're all friends, and it's a dynamic we haven't had since basically this.
Yeah, it's kind of strange that this Hogan Savage feud was one of the most successful in wrestling history, so it's really strange that they've never tried to recreate it.
Definitely agree, and I definitely think that they could have. I mean, there's no reason why there can't be more personal relationships in wrestling, especially since it's so much fodder for them to break down and get destroyed. And if you look at Enzo and Cass, for example, for a recent example, that stuff is amazing. That's how you really get into fans and get their emotions and get money out of their pocketbooks. That's the stuff. I don't know why we don't get more of it.
Well, and I think part of it is what made this feud so great was they really took their time with it. Hogan and Savage had some interactions before WrestleMania, and then they cement the relationship at WrestleMania, and then it's an entire year until they face off. Today, if they were going to do something like this, it would probably be they'd become partners at WrestleMania, and then they'd have their feud and breakup and match by SummerSlam. It would be hard for them to ever plan anything out this far in advance.
You're absolutely right. And it's a major credit to them because every step of the way, there are subtle things happening that you at home can be that's a little bit interesting. But until it actually all comes together and you can see the whole picture, you'll go back and be oh my God, Hogan had his hand on her ass. Or oh my God, Savage looks so mad right there. I didn't even realize it because I was so caught up in the excitement of the whole thing. Like, you can see step by step by step how they get to the feud, how they'll get there, and how both sides are going to have the ability to claim that it's the other guy's fault. Like that's brilliant storytelling. This is still to this day one of the best things they've ever done.
Yeah, I think anybody with a brain could have, saw where this was going. If you have any understanding of just kind of how wrestling is booked, you can figure it out. But that's part of the fun of a really well-laid twist, is that it doesn't come out of nowhere, that there are hints along the way, and it's enjoyable for you to be able to figure it out as it's going on.
Yeah, just that moment where you can be like, you see it coming and you're like, no, 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 come on, no.
Yeah, so the main event, it's Hogan and Savage against DiBiase and Andre, and for some reason, Jesse Ventura is the referee.
For some reason. I even did research online, and I couldn't figure out any goddamn reason why he was here.
I don't think there was. I don't know if maybe at this point they were thinking he might be able to come out of retirement, because he'd been done for a while at this point. Yeah, I don't really know. Beyond it just added another wrinkle to the match.
Yeah, a very weird wrinkle, which we'll get to, because I don't know what the hell he was doing.
So it was August 29th, 1988, from Madison Square Garden in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. It was a sellout crowd and a very successful show, a 4.5 buy rate, equaling about 400,000 buys. This was, a good step for the company after WrestleMania 4 had really kind of bombed.
Which is really impressive. I wonder, there are a lot of times where people will say that we never found out whether or not Randy Savage could draw or whether Warrior could draw because Hogan was always there. Do you think that the higher buy rate is just because of Hogan's bigger involvement, or what do you attribute it to?
Savage and Hogan drew like gangbusters. WrestleMania 5 was huge. SummerSlam 89 was huge. And maybe we'll credit SummerSlam 89 to Zeus, but Savage certainly played a role. Or Brutus the fucking Barber.
Oh, Brutus.
But that's next week's episode. This week, we're kicking the show off with a tag team match. We've got the British Bulldogs against the Fabulous Rougeaus. And it's a 20-minute draw in the opening match.
Which is a shame, because the fans were actually really getting into it towards the end. Like,
I thought it was a good match. It was really, really long, but good tag match here.
It was so weird of them to choose the time limit draw finish, because they didn't really have that much stuff to do. They were just kind of killing time for like 20 fucking minutes until finally, like, the last minute is super hot and then they go home. Like, it was very odd.
And they don't execute the time limit. The way you do a time limit draw is you count down to it. You announce, 5 minutes left in the match, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 10, 9, 8. Like, that's when the crowd is really going wild for it. But here, the bell just rings. Like, there's been no countdown, no notification of how much time has gone by. The match just stops. And the bell comes 19 minutes into the match, not 20.
I always felt like it was kind of like a bad trick on the fans. Like, hey, you were getting into this match? Sucker. There's no fucking into this match. You shouldn't have been getting into it. Like, it feels like it would have pissed me off if I had been there.
Yeah, the only thing I really get into with the Rougeaus is I love their handshake gimmick.
Yes. And their tiny little American flags?
They would just angrily insist that the babyfaces shake their hands. And the babyfaces would refuse to do it because they know these guys are scumbags and they're going to take a cheap shot. But just go on for like minutes and minutes, shake my hand. And finally they'd do it. The babyface would shake their hand and they'd kick him in the gut every time. Overall, it was a slow match because they were filling 20 minutes, but I just love the British Bulldogs. I think a team whose work really stands out as being ahead of its time.
Yeah, Bulldog is actually, I know that Dynamite normally gets all of the praise from the British Bulldogs because he's the Dynamite Kid and he pioneered an innovative style, and that's fully in evidence here for sure. But I was actually the most impressed by Davey Boy here because, man, he was great. Everything he did was spot on. He looked so fucking strong. He had like an amazing look to him. Like, it's almost amazing that they didn't try to do something more main event with him. And I think we covered that even last time we talked about him on the, what was it, the 1996 show?
Ooh, fuck if I know.
Yeah, but I feel like we've talked about this before, but it just seems so weird that he's not one of those like big musclehead guys that they threw up against Hogan or something like that, because he looks amazing.
Yeah, he really did, but really limited promo, I think, was probably what was holding him back.
Makes sense. Yeah, this is a fine match, but it's not anything any of these guys would want you to remember.
No, and it was probably like the second best match of the night.
Oh my God, you're right. Ugh.
Yeah. Okay, next up, they replayed an incident from Superstars where Outlaw Ron Bass attacked Brutus Beefcake. Bass beat him up with his bull rope. As a result, Beefcake is injured, and he will not be able to wrestle the Honky Tonk Man tonight. So, Honky's partner, or Honky's opponent, is a mystery. We don't know who it will be.
Now, Brutus the Barber Beefcake maintains to this day that he was originally supposed to get the match with Honky and beat him here at this show, and that Ultimate Warrior threw a fit backstage and forced them to change it. I don't believe that shit for 1 second, but what do you think?
No, I mean, I don't know. They did push Beefcake much further than they should have because he was Hogan's buddy. He was the first one to beat Mr. Perfect, but yeah, it would have been really bad if they'd blown Honky Tonk Man's ridiculously long title run on Brutus the fucking Barber.
Yeah, and with all the ways that they've buried Ultimate Warrior over the years, I think they would have mentioned him throwing a temper tantrum about not getting a title shot. So
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's not true. But I honestly, when I watched this, I was just sitting there curious because I had no idea who the hell Ron Bass was. Like, I thought I had a good handle on everyone who's ever wrestled for this company. Who the hell is Ron Bass?
Big tough cowboy. He bounced. He wasn't around. I don't feel like he was in the WWF for very long. I think he was more of a Crockett guy.
Yeah.
My
favorite part.
He's a big Southern cowboy. It's just, Vince McMahon loves cowboy gimmicks.
My favorite part was when he grabbed his spur and they dropped the huge censored sign over the whole thing.
Yeah, much too graphic to show on television.
And then every once in a while you just see like baby Shawn Michaels poke his head out of the censored sign like, oh, hey, everybody's in the ring.
Next up, we had Bad News Brown against Ken Patera. One of these guys rocks and the other sucks. Bad News Brown is amazing.
Bad News Brown is one of the most legit badasses in wrestling history, I think is pretty safe to say.
Would never want to fight that man under any circumstances.
It's actually a shame because I think if he had been younger during this time, I think he would have gotten a much bigger push than he wound up getting. I mean, he went around the horn with Hogan and he got like a pretty decent run as an overheel, but I think that he could have been somebody's top star. I will always fully believe that. Like he was like Austin before Austin. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. He's a heel, but he doesn't get along with the other heels either. He's just totally like his own guy, doesn't like anybody.
I almost wish he had like incorporated more of his judo stuff in it too, because he's legit one of the best judo artists in American history.
Yeah, but they had to be, because he's a black guy, they had to be like, oh, Street Fighter from Harlem, New York.
I remember hearing for years before I ever saw one of his matches that his finisher was called the Ghetto Blaster. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
And then finding out that it's a fucking Enziguri like Kawada used to do, I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah. Got like a guy who's like 280 pounds doing a climb up Enziguri.
Hey man, and it looks horrible here, but that's because of Ken Patera. Yeah, now Patera is like straight out of jail here, right?
Yeah, and they actually acknowledge it, which is kind of amazing.
Well, they did like a whole campaign, like the redemption of Ken Patera. He's dyeing his hair back to its original color. He's a babyface now.
Why did Vince love Ken Patera? Is it the muscles, or is it that he was an Olympian and he just loves that kind of Mr. USA thing?
I think it's the Olympian thing, man. Like, he always had time for an Olympian, no matter what they were an Olympian in.
Mark
or
Henry, Kurt Angle,
Yeah. Like, even though, like, Kim Patera has one of the worst looks in the history of professional wrestling. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, probably.
He looks embarrassingly shitty, and everything he does looks embarrassingly shitty. And here he's a babyface and doesn't even have to do much, and everything he does do is bad.
Crowd has zero interest in anything he does. No reaction to his comebacks.
It's just, and this was right after his like big build-up comeback. That's horrible. Yeah. And one final note about Kim Patera, because I just wanted to say while I was researching him, his last match of his career was at Juggalo Championship Wrestling against Bob Backlund.
A fate he deserved.
In 2011.
Oh my God, he must have been 100 years old. He was 45 at this point.
Yeah, so everybody looked that shit up online.
So he was like legitimately 70 years old and still wrestling.
Yep, him and Backlund both. Sure is.
Yeah, so this match was not good at all. Bad News Brown gets the win with the Ghetto Blaster. What a name. Yeah. Ooh. Next up, Mean Gene interviewed the Mega Powers. They said that Elizabeth was their secret weapon, which means she's no longer secret.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure like what the idea was here. Like, I'm not really sure why they needed a secret weapon, because I mean, Hogan had beaten like DiBiase a couple of times around the horn by this point. At worst, you could call it an even split, and everybody had beaten DiBiase 100 times. Like, what do you need the secret weapon for?
Insurance.
I guess. Like, it's like a weird heelish sort of thing, though, right? To be like, our manager's the secret weapon. He's going to help us take these boys out.
Well, I think it does create the intrigue of, like, Elizabeth never did anything. Like, never got involved in matches. So the idea that she was actually going to do something was intriguing.
That is a good point.
So next match was Rick Rude against the Junkyard Dog. This is right in the middle of Rick Rude's awesome feud with Jake Roberts, but that never had a pay-per-view match. Instead, we get Rick Rude against the JYD.
And it's a big loss because the whole thing just feels like filler. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point to this match. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't mean anything until he pulls down his pants and shows the airbrush tights that he has on underneath his other airbrush tights that has Jake the Snake's wife on it.
Like, everybody's seen this.
And it was amazing.
Oh, God.
And Jake charges the ring, and that shit was amazing. It just makes you wonder, like, I don't know. House shows were so important at the time.
I think they could have just done Rude against Roberts with this DQ finish that they did anyway, and that would have been fine.
Yeah, just have it be a normal heated match, and then in the middle of the match, just have him pull down the pants.
Yeah, pulls his tights off, and oh my God, he's got Cheryl's face on it, on the crotch.
And this whole period of WWE, like, it always seems like they're just trying to force people on the card. Like, oh, hey, JYD still has some overness left to him. Let's job him out.
JYD did not have a lot of gas left in the tank at this point. He was still over, but yeah, he was way past it.
Yeah, the roster always seems to be comprised of new guys on the way up and old ass guys jobbing their way out.
Yeah. So yeah, nothing really to this match other than the really fun angle of the Cheryl Roberts tights are just something that. Whoever came up with that was an absolute genius.
And whoever did the airbrushing for him is a goddamn artist, because that stuff is right on.
I'd love to see an estimate on how much money he spent on his gear, because it's got to be thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah, I would guess so. Actually, when we were watching it, this is just an anecdote, but I asked my wife, who was watching with me and who was very unhappy that she was watching with me because this show sucked. I was just like, hey, if you were around in 1988, would you have found Rick Rude attractive? And we couldn't figure it out.
Really?
Like, he has everything that
seems like an attractive guy.
He would have everything that would classically seem to be attractive, but it's just something
sleazy
off about it.
Greasy.
Yeah, maybe it is the sleaze. I don't know, but I can't tell if in that position I would have found the guy attractive then.
I mean, he has
But
fantastic build, like a
yeah,
nice mustache, long hair, but he is a complete dirtbag.
yeah, I think that's probably what it is. Yeah, we just couldn't determine, man. So if you guys are out there listening to this, please weigh in on whether or not you would have fucked 1988 Recruit.
That is the question of the week. Next up, we get Mean Gene in the back with Honky Tonk Man and Jimmy Hart. Honky is feeling real cocky, throws out an open challenge. He'll wrestle anybody who wants a shot tonight because he's the Honky Tonk Man.
My favorite thing is when they eventually get to the match, everyone makes a big deal about like saying that they don't know who it's going to be, and Fingal doesn't know, and Gorilla doesn't know, and Billy doesn't know. Gene Okerlund knows, though. Like, he keeps trying to tell Honky Tonk.
Gene knows everything.
Yeah, and Honky's just like, no, I don't even want to know who it is. And Gene just like, you should learn.
Yeah. Now, Mean Gene knew everything. Fucking scheme, Gene.
It's almost like,
but you had to call the hotline to find out.
I kept half expecting him to turn to the screen and be like, if you want to know who it is, call 1-800-SCHEME-GENE.
It's just $1.99 a minute. Kids, get your parents' permission first.
You got to hear all about the results from the fucking house show in Sarasota before I tell you, though.
I can't believe, oh man, what a great money-making scheme that was. I can't believe that ever went away.
Yeah. I mean, I remember doing it when I like towards the end of when I was watching wrestling in the 90s. I remember it being like, Ahmed Johnson won't be at the next show. Find out why. And I'd be like, oh shit, I want to know why.
You gotta know.
You just sneak to the phone and use your parents' credit card.
Next match was the Powers of Pain against the Bolsheviks. God have mercy on our souls.
I say this as
Slick is managing the Bolsheviks for some reason.
Because that goes together, yeah.
I mean, yeah, no, that doesn't really fit at all.
I never felt like Slick ever managed anybody who it seemed like Slick would want to manage. It always
the
feel
African Dream.
All right, well,
the Big Boss Man, a policeman.
That would just seem kind of weird. But like literally, his whole gimmick was that he was a sleazy con artist, and then it would be like he's managing the Bolsheviks.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was just like the B heel, the C heel manager because he was below Jimmy Hart too. So it was just they'd put him with whoever.
Yep, pretty much.
Baron von Raschke is managing the Powers of Pain and their faces.
Yeah, that was weird. How long did that last with Baron von Raschke out there?
Not long. He like 100 years old at this point.
Yeah. Now, I say this as...
he's still alive because wasn't he in the front row of the pay-per-view at Money in the Bank?
He sure was, and he actually looked pretty good.
Yeah, I really wanted to see him put the claw on one of the Singh brothers.
I think I can't remember which show we watched. Maybe it was Survivor Series 1990 or something like that, where the Warlord was on it, and it was literally the first Warlord match that I can ever remember seeing, and I liked him in it. And so I say this as a newly Warlord fan, and maybe the only one walking the earth at this time. He fucking sucked here. They suck.
Yeah, this match went 7 minutes, and it really should have been 2.
I just, like, there was nothing to do. The Bolsheviks couldn't really sell for anything.
Oh, the Bolsheviks were, I mean, they were getting really old by this point. The gimmick was stale, and, like, they weren't very good workers to begin with. And, I mean, the appeal of the Powers of Pain, especially his faces, is just that they're going to destroy people. So I don't know why this couldn't have just been, like, a quick 2-minute match.
Right. And that's part of my problem with them only having like old guys doing all the jobs, is that none of the jobs look good. It's like they have overness that they're transferring, but like all the matches suck so much that the other guys aren't looking impressive.
Yeah, this is where they could really use some young guys who could bump.
Yeah, but unfortunately they weren't allowed to sign anybody under 6'2", so or 320 pounds. So
yeah.
Well,
oof, yeah, terrible match. Next segment was the Brother Love show in the ring, and his guest was Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which, whatever. The big thing is, the hope was that his guest would be Ric Flair, because Flair was considering leaving Crockett for the WWF, but he got cold feet and didn't end up coming over for another couple years. But how different would history have been if Ric Flair jumped to the WWF in 1988?
First of all, new Lawcast drinking game. Every time we tell you that Ric Flair was supposed to come over and debut during a segment on the show, take a shot. It would have been a huge difference. Like, this is an interesting turning point because he could have worked underneath with a lot of these guys, and I really feel like let's say that he comes over now and he's the one who works with Warrior. Like, how much of a difference does that make for both of their careers going forward? Or maybe he can make a new face, or maybe he can be that new face and they don't need Warrior. The next couple of years were so tumultuous as they sort of sought out a way to get through them without depending on Hogan all the time. Flair would have made a gigantic difference.
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy who, in his WWF run, his initial run, I don't feel like ever really quite clicked. And he was still good, but his style wasn't really a good fit for the style of the time. But they still really could have used him. And like him against Savage was great a couple years later, but would have been great here. We would have actually gotten a proper match against Hogan. Him and Brett could have worked together earlier. There's no shortage of potential opponents here.
Yeah, and that's sort of the interesting thing is that right now in the company, there's not that second layer of like upper mid-carders below the main event and above the mid-carders. They're trying to like kind of sort that out. And Flair would have definitely helped by pushing some of the guys who they were pushing on top and didn't really want to down. It would have helped everybody. It would have made everybody like have a little breathing room for a change. It would have helped the B-level house shows when they're going on tours. It would have helped keep they probably could have kept Savage and Hogan going for another year if they wanted to.
Yeah,
like
we would have gotten
a lot could have changed.
Flair against Jake the Snake. That would have been awesome.
Oh my God!
They never really got to work together that I remember.
No, I don't even know if they ever had a match together.
They may not have ever touched.
And by the time we did get Flair, it was past the 80s. It was time to move on into a new generation. Flair had kind of lost some of his confidence with how the falling out with Crockett went. It was different. It wasn't the right time for that.
Yeah, so this Brother Love show, it was fun because Brother Love's an entertaining character, but nothing really to it. Duggan chases Brother Love away with the 2x4.
I don't know, like, this would be a fun game for somebody to go back and watch. I think that Jim Duggan may have been in more pointless segments that had no actual purpose and were just there to pop crowds than anyone else in wrestling history.
That was really his whole career, was just one long USA chant.
I can only remember like 3 feuds he ever even had in his whole career. It was just a lot of this.
Yeah, I struggle to think of many Jim Duggan actual matches he had on pay-per-view. Nothing really jumps out at me.
Probably for the best. The ones I can remember, I wish I could.
Yeah. So next up, we've got the Honky Tonk Man defending his Intercontinental Championship against a mystery opponent. Honky Tonk Man has been the Intercontinental Champion for 14 months at this point. He is the most viable, despicable heel. He has managed to keep his title in the most just absurd chicken shit ways. Never wins any matches, gets disqualified, gets counted out, always keeps the title. He is so obnoxious. He is such a natural great heel. And here he finally gets his comeuppance, and it is absolutely perfect.
I feel like a lot of people today don't really understand or appreciate what Honky Tonk Man was during this period. Like, for the Intercontinental Champion to be like an enormous draw is not something that was just the case. Yeah. And during this period, Honky Tonk Man drew money.
Yeah, like he sold the Garden out a number of times. Him and Savage sold out everywhere they worked.
People were so desperate to see him lose because there weren't really characters like this. Like, there were kind of chicken shit heels who would do it from time to time. But his whole gimmick was that he was not deserving of any win he had ever received in his entire career. Like, he was a piece of shit who could not wrestle, but just kept cheating his way into wins. He's like the perfect, like, assimilation of a chicken shit heel, where you just feel like anyone could beat him. You could beat him.
Yeah.
but
And
nobody can.
somehow it just never works out. Not even Savage could beat him because
Yeah, so
Honky refused to job to him.
that's the genius. And he could talk him into the building. He was so aggravating. Ugh.
The guitar, the
So
Elvis, oh my God, you hate him so much.
and like even then, Elvis was so dated, and it was like, oh, what are you doing? This is stupid.
The greatest story is that Vince thought he was a babyface. Vince brought him in as a babyface. Like, they kept bringing him out on Superstars, and he would get booed out of the building. And like after a couple tapings of this, Vince was finally like, "Fine, we'll make him a heel." But yeah, like just odd cluelessness from Vince here.
Everything Vince thinks is cool gets over as a heel. That's just something to remember.
It's never changed.
Oh my
It's older than you think.
But like they milk it first of all, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like
Honky comes out, he gets on the mic. Hey, get me somebody out here to wrestle. I don't care who it is.
and then they like let it sit for like a full 2 minutes while everyone's
his opponent.
And then the music hits.
Yeah.
And it's a catharsis because the second the music hits,
like it's like Goldberg coming out. There's no question he's gonna win.
Yeah. So like he comes out. Now it must be said, like this is an amazing moment. Like the crowd loses their minds. Like this is like
they're going so crazy.
The release they've been waiting for.
And they don't mess around. Like they don't have a 10-minute match. It's 30 seconds. Boom, 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 pin.
Literally, Warrior never stops running. Like he just continues moving the whole time. Now, let the record show. The Ultimate Warrior is horrible.
Oh, he really is.
He did get better. Like he had good matches. Like his match. Yeah, his matches with Savage and Hogan, and I think he made, and like even some of the ones with Rude.
Yeah,
they were good. But at this point, like it's like he doesn't even know what to do with his body. Like he's just moving like spastically, like his arms are just shooting out in random directions.
And
Honky
kind of worked for the character, but yeah, it was one of those turning a weakness into a strength that he was just so hyped up and out of control.
Yeah, it was like Honky didn't even know how to sell for him because it's like Honky didn't even know where to be to expect to get hit.
Yeah, I can't recommend Honky Tonk Man's shoot interviews enough, but he talks about working with Warrior, and he's just like, worst days I ever had. Just like, guy was the stiffest thing he ever worked with. Just every shot was a real shot.
Though he does tell an amazing story in one of his shoot interviews of like Warrior stiffing Andre like that.
Yes.
Of being like, he would like tie himself up in the ropes like Andre always did, and Warrior would shoot off the ropes and like he would just like fly into Andre when Andre's supposed to put his like arm up to stop him, and Andre would be like, and then
"You'll make me very mad."
And then he'd try the spot again, and he'd fuck it up again, and Andre would be like, And he tried it one more time, and Andre just put his fist up, and Warrior knocked himself out on Andre's fist. That's an amazing story.
And next time he got it right, and Andre turned to Bobby Heenan and went, "He's learning." But yeah, this was the highlight of the show for me. I just think this is absolutely perfect. This is something. The only time Goldberg and Brock was kind of like this, but it was like a weird version of this that I didn't think made sense. But this is the kind of thing I'd love to see more, where it's just a surprise squash. Like, I would have loved it if they had Braun Strowman squash Brock Lesnar, and it was just like, oh my God, this is the new guy. He just killed Brock off.
Right. And like that's how you would want it to be done rather than like necessarily Goldberg doing it.
Yeah. Or if Goldberg had beaten Hogan when they had the match at the George Dome, if he'd beaten Hogan in a minute.
Especially since like you can go places after that. You can be like, Hogan says he wasn't ready, and then get like a real match out of it later. But just like the shock and like emotion that you get from the crowd when you actually surprise them, it's beautiful.
Yeah, because the way wrestling works is every big main event match has to be 15, 20, at least 10 minutes. But I love an occasional just surprise squash. When it's done right, it's perfect.
Oh my god! Back in the day with Ring of Honor, I used to like beg them to do stuff like that because like literally it was like set in stone. Every main event goes 30 minutes. Doesn't even matter who's in it. Doesn't matter if it's Sanjay Dutt in the fucking main event. It's going 35.
Yeah. It's just when you occasionally do the shock. And I wasn't a huge fan of the Brock Goldberg thing they did, although I think it was understandable given Goldberg's extreme limitations. But
it turned out as well as it could.
Yeah. But I would like to see this sort of thing happen more often, just to make it seem like it could happen.
Agreed. Definitely agree.
So coming down hard from that, our next match was Don Morocco versus Dino Bravo in what was, I called this the most roided up match of the night, but was it really?
I mean, there were a lot of steroids to go around, man.
But yeah, these guys both like just look like overinflated balloons.
The only thing that was even passingly amusing in this match was seeing Don Morocco be announced as The Rock. And I was like, oh yeah, that other Rock from Hawaii.
Yeah. Dino Bravo to me is just like the most bland, boring, personality-less wrestler there's ever been. Like him and Ken Patera should have been a tag team.
I just felt like it was so weird that Dino Bravo was here because I always felt like he was like a full 6 inches shorter than everyone else.
Yeah. I mean,
and he's big, but like, why is he beating people?
Vince just loved the strong man.
They're all strong men.
Yeah. I mean, he was really, really, really jacked.
That's true.
Don Morocco was really old. This was not a good match at all.
No, it was horrible. Thank God it was short. And there's like just a run of matches on this show that it's like if you had just left the room and come back and missed the entire thing, you'd be like, well, whatever.
Yeah. Bravo wins with the side suplex in 5 minutes. Nothing at all.
Nothing. Nope.
Next match was much better. Demolition defending the tag titles against the Hart Foundation. Hart Foundation have recently gone face. They've ditched Jimmy Hart, who's now managing Demolition, in addition to Mr. Fuji. So we've got the loudmouth from Memphis and the Japanese guy managing the two face-painted white dudes.
The other good part of it was the storyline was kind of the Hart Foundation had turned face and gotten rid of Jimmy Hart, but he still owned their contracts. So he was still there.
I love that kind of thing.
Yeah, he was still their manager, but they didn't want him around, but he had the right to be there. So he just screwed them over in every match.
Yeah. So Brett starts the match out on fire. He tags in Neidhart, and Neidhart gets worked over very briefly, but then it's a hot tag to Brett. Brett hits the post. He gets worked over. Hot tag to Neidhart. The referee doesn't see it. Now Neidhart comes in hot. He cleans house. Neidhart hits a great slingshot out to the floor, which is kind of incredible for a guy that size. Big power slam from Neidhart, only gets 2. Brett tags in. He can't get the pin. We get a Pier 6 brawl. Brett goes for a pile driver. He gets hit with the megaphone and pinned. I thought it was a really good match, and I wish it had been a lot longer than it was.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why it didn't get more time. It's not like anything else on this show was so important or necessary. They couldn't have moved it. But, man, the Hart Foundation...
Wouldn't this have been the perfect 20-minute draw?
Yes.
Like that's the purpose of a draw when the babyface is about to win the title. Like I found that very strange with the Omega Okada match that it ended after Okada was about to pin Omega. It just felt like the opposite.
Yeah, especially since he had already beaten Omega once before, so it's not like they're doing a thing where like he can't beat him.
Yeah.
And he needs to. Like it was
I'm
weird.
all for 60-minute draws. I think that's really cool. But yeah, to me, the utility of the time limit draw, there's kind of 2 ways it works. One is when it's like the really underdog baby face manages to go to the time limit with the heel who was favored. or when it's the heel champion retains his title because of the time limit.
Yeah. That's actually my favorite version of it, where like the babyface is just unloading everything on the heel, but they just can't get it done.
Yeah, like every WCW TV title match from the 90s.
Yeah, I think you're right. The other weird thing is I always think of Demolition as baby faces just because of like they became huge baby faces. They're heels here, but like the fans really like them.
Yeah,
And, like they don't care that they're heels at all.
Paint, you're automatically over.
Oh my god, but their look is so bad, man. Like I've talked about it every time that they've wrestled on one of our shows. But
Not into the S&M gear.
It's like the cheapest Halloween store BDSM gear I've ever seen.
Yeah. So yeah, this was for me the best match on the show by a pretty decent margin.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There were only two decent matches on the show. And I feel like it was like that a lot. Like the tag matches were the work rate matches, and everything else was just kind of there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that frequently in this era, house shows would end with a tag match because that was always delivering the best match.
Well, also, so Hulk could get home and have that sweet room service, brother.
Yeah. Next up, we had Mean Gene interviewing Honky Tonk Man and Jimmy Hart. Really fun promo here where they're both just kind of screaming about how it wasn't fair, Honky wasn't ready, he didn't know. And he does have a point here. It wasn't fair that he didn't know who he was going to be defending his title against.
Hey, man. Gene tried to tell him. Yeah. Gene knows everything. Gene gave him the number to the hotline.
And next match was the Big Boss Man against Coco Beware. Boss Man had just debuted. He is fucking huge here.
Yeah, he is.
It's always interesting to me that he lost a ton of weight as he got older. He was way lighter in his run in the Attitude Era. But he couldn't move as well at that point, probably because his weight, being so heavy earlier in his career, damaged his back.
Yeah. I just can't believe how well he can move, not only because he's incredible. So enormous, but he's wearing like a full police jumpsuit from head to toe, man. And like boots and
like
how the hell are you running in that?
Yeah. But he's just like, he's doing drop downs. He's doing kind of running around the ring, getting in behind the guy. It's incredible. I'm big fan of the Big Boss Man.
Yeah. The only thing that looks really bad in this is when he comes off the top rope, which was a cool idea, but it just like kind of sloppily, like kind of hits his feet, kind of lands the move, and the.
Yeah, so a lot of the match is building up to Boss Man goes goes to the top rope for a splash that would absolutely kill Coco. Coco rolls out of the way and Boss Man doesn't sell it. Like, I don't know if he was maybe he was supposed to land on his feet and he didn't quite do it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure because it was kind of an ugly splash to begin with, so I'm not really sure if it was supposed to hit him or not. Because Boss Man's so big that he's just taking up so much of the ring that he kind of hits him anyway.
But yeah, Boss Man just kind of pops right back up, misses a corner charge. Coco makes his comeback, but Boss Man shuts it down, hits the Boss Man slam, and gets the pin in 6 minutes. Thought that was a fun squash match.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, Coco, when we talk about enhancement talent and how they're using all these old crappy guys, like Coco made Boss Man look good. That's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. He was one of the best. He was probably the best jobber they had in this era.
Yeah, there's no shame in being a jobber. Just be a good one.
Yeah. Sean Mooney interviews the Ultimate Warrior. He screams incoherently and says he's taking his spaceship to parts unknown.
My favorite part about this is he makes it clear in it that he can be summoned. Like, that's how he chooses his matches. Is that the Warriors summon him with lightning bolts in parts unknown, and he's like, cool, hops on a spaceship. He made that clear? And comes to the... Well, I wouldn't say clear necessarily.
Yeah. Were Warrior promos good or bad? I think they were great, but I can see the case someone would make that they were terrible.
Look, if the point of a babyface promo is to make you like the babyface more and want to see more of it, then I definitely think they were great promos. If the point was to get across an idea about the feud or match you're going to have, oh my God, they're so bad.
Yeah. totally incoherent. And I don't know, do you feel like they had deeper meaning and we just didn't get them? Like sometimes I feel that way about Bray Wyatt promos, that they're just kind of too complex and I'm not, going to dig deep enough to figure them out. Was Warrior just babbling?
The Bray Wyatt thing is a very good point because none of his feuds ever actually go anywhere that he's suggesting they're going to go. So it's just kind of like a lot of talking for no reason. I don't know. The Warrior stuff is interesting because there are times where it really feels like he hits on something and it's really interesting. Famously, it's the, and then your plane will go down, Hulk Hogan. And like that was a genuinely creepy and awesome promo. Like he could hit on that kind of stuff. But normally I do feel like he was just kind of gibberish nonsense yelling.
Yeah. Is the Ultimate Warrior a Native American gimmick?
Yes.
I didn't realize that until like 6 months ago.
Yep. And yeah, it's one of those things where like I have to feel kind of questionable about that. If you look at, he's basically just Chief Jay Strongbow. Now, I don't know if that was the intention from Black when he was in the Blade Runners with Sting, or because he had always kind of had the tassels in the face paint. But the way he's presented, it's very much like the Warriors and the War Cry, and all of you will call to the heavens. And it's like, oh, you mean that.
Those heavens, yeah.
Yeah.
So next up we had Jake Roberts against Hercules. It's a Jake match, so it's pretty good.
It's okay. It's a Hercules match, so it's only okay.
So the part I really enjoyed here was at some point Jake gets Hercules in a headlock. Hercules back suplexes him, but Jake doesn't break the headlock. That was the coolest thing that happened in this match.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Jake would always do the little things in a match that would make you kind of sit up and go like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But like, there's nothing here. And it's not for any reason. Like, we've already seen the segment that features Jake's feud in it. So like, what the fuck is the point of having him here?
Just filling time. And he hits the DDT and it pops the crowd.
Yeah. It was definitely just a time filler. There's like nothing else going on.
Yeah, so it's main event time. We got the Mega Powers against the Mega Bucks.
Yay!
The Mega Bucks have Virgil and Bobby Heenan in their corner. The Mega Powers have Elizabeth. I was surprised that the Mega Powers came out to Savage's music and not Hogan's.
Yeah, that is interesting. And then when the match ended, like it was Hogan's music, so that's pretty cool. Like it's like everything about it seemed calculated for Hogan to be like, Savage is the guy. He's the guy you're looking at. He's got the belt. Everybody look over here at Savage. What a guy. He's my buddy.
Yeah. So they stall for a long time at the beginning here. It's just, when you have a guest referee, it's always like they're going to enforce the rules really stringently. So, yeah, they have to they take forever to pat everybody down and to get the managers out of the ring.
Dude, tell me what the hell Jesse Ventura was doing with the tag ropes.
No idea.
He goes over to where the tag ropes are on the ring post, unties them, runs over to the other side, and then ties them back on. And it's like, why? It takes 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no answer for that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they were just told like we need to buy some time, but that's a really bad way to buy time. If they were going to buy time, they could have just had Jesse pose more.
Right. And like Jesse seemed oddly out of place in this whole thing. Like he really wanted to do a good job and like be part of the match, but like there was nothing for him to do. So he just manifested that by constantly being in everyone's way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. With the special referee, it always seems like their thing is they're going to enforce the rules super strictly.
Yeah,
and it sort of makes sense for Jesse because he would always complain when the baby faces would cheat, and especially when Hogan would cheat.
Right, and people always forget that like the main skill of a referee is not like all the things you see them do. The main skill of a referee is staying the fuck out of the way and being in position and telling the spots. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, absolutely. So DiBiase starts off getting worked over by Hogan and Savage. Hogan is an idiot and goes after Andre, so he gets beat up. Hogan manages to tag in Savage. Now it's Savage's turn to get worked on. DiBiase misses his like super arrogant back elbow drop from the top rope where he just kind of falls off and then
move.
like doesn't roll through after. Yeah, it's a pretty impressive bump. Savage makes a hot tag to Hogan. Hogan takes down Andre. Savage goes for the flying elbow, but he eats Andre's boot. Savage is knocked to the floor. Andre attacks Hogan and throws him out of the ring. The Mega Powers are about to be counted out until Miss Elizabeth gets up on the apron and takes off her skirt.
Surprise, guys! The secret weapon was her ass.
Yeah. I mean, naturally, she is wearing the like least revealing like bikini bottoms you could possibly imagine.
Now, it's important to note here that for a lot of people during this era, like this is an image that put them through puberty. Like this was a big deal.
Yeah, and you compare it to today where like all of the pornography in the history of the world is a click away, and it was just a different time.
Yeah. And it's so funny because the guys in the ring, it's a lot less like, oh my God, she's so attractive, I must fuck her now. And a lot more like, what the hell is she doing? Like, where did her pants go? What's happening?
But yeah, Jesse is like transfixed by this.
Oh yes, which I'm sure was a shoot.
This is one of those things where it's like you hear these stories about how like insanely jealous and possessive Randy Savage was, and you're like, how did they talk him into this?
You know, it's so interesting because I think it's just part of it was just because he was there and he trusted Hogan. Like Hogan was the guy, only person that he could really felt like he could trust. Well, you're not wrong there. And that's the fascinating thing is like she's there and she seems so uncomfortable. Like she keeps putting her skirt over herself. Like she doesn't want to be doing this.
No. Yeah. I mean, Elizabeth is so strange to me because she's pretty, but like not at all sexy.
Yeah. I mean, she's so pretty and
innocent.
And she seems classy and elegant.
Yeah.
Like not the kind of person whose ass I need to see.
No. Like the opposite of Sherry Martel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like Sherry Martel isn't pretty, but she's sexy as hell, I would say.
I'm about to say her ass can grace every pay-per-view.
Yeah,
that's just fine with me.
There's a reason when Hogan Atomic dropped her, he held her up and copped a feel on her for about 30 seconds first.
Oh boy.
Fucking Hogan.
Oh my God.
So what happened here? The Powers come back. They beat up Andre, throw him to the floor. Hogan slams DiBiase, flying elbow, leg drop. 1, 2. Jesse doesn't want to count the 3, but Savage forces his hand down.
And yet, I guess there was kind of a storyline where like they had paid off Ventura to like be on the heel side. Like they didn't really explain that.
Did they really need to pay him though? He's a heel.
That's a good point. Yeah, it was just like
he hates Hogan. He likes Savage, but still.
Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, they count the 3, and then the actual magic starts. Like the whole reason we're here might as well have been for this segment. Like you might as well have not even bothered with the match.
Pose.
Hogan must pose, dude.
Yeah. Ridiculously long pose down here.
But it's maybe the most important pose down that Hulk Hogan ever does. Because what basically happens is, as soon as the match is over, he grabs Elizabeth and they hug. And they hug for like 20 seconds. While Randy is up on the top rope posing and like having a good time. Savage turns around and the look on his face is so clearly a what the fuck?
What's he doing? Yeah, what?
Yeah, and then Hogan just runs over, grabs his arm, and just like, yeah, brother, we're the best, yeah. And Savage is like, oh, all right, well, no big deal. No, I must have been seeing things. It's fine.
And yeah, they drag it out further, and then they do another one at Survivor Series and another one at the Rumble, and it just builds and builds and builds, and they finally explode at the Saturday night's main event before WrestleMania. But we'll cover this more in depth when we do WrestleMania 5 someday.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because they'll do a video, like a series of promos with Savage when he's explaining why he eventually attacks Hogan. And like, it's just so great because it's just like you can see all of the moments that would make Savage think that Hogan was fucking him over, like him grabbing Elizabeth's ass just to steady her, but she's in her panties and it's not okay. And like just Savage being like, and you had lust in your eyes. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely awesome. It was a good version of that promo they had Ryback do when he turned heel.
I did not think Ryback was going to be mentioned on the podcast today. So big ups to Ryback.
There's always time for a Ryback mention. Yeah, so kind of wrapping this one up, that was not a very good wrestling show, even for the era. That was a lot. I mean, maybe it was better than WrestleMania 4 because WrestleMania 4 had a million matches on it, but not good. Not good here.
Yeah, it's clear that they have a great main event that's going on. Like Savage and Hogan is so cool. DiBiase's holding his own. But there's just not much beyond that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem that will continue to plague them for a couple of years.
Yeah, not a lot on the mid-card. I mean, they really could have used a good, solid Rude-Jake match that could have gone 10 to 15 minutes before a DQ finish.
Yeah, it's just important to remember that this is a different time where they didn't necessarily give a shit if there was a big match that delivered on the show. Like, they already had your money, brother.
Yeah, and this show did really strong business. People just wanted more WWF pay-per-views.
Yep.
I mean, they were paying to see Hulk Hogan because they were not getting to see him wrestle on TV ever.
Yep, and that's the genius, the marketing genius of it all. Like, it doesn't need to be good. It just needs to be Hogan.
Yeah. And because it's such a rare product, people will pay to see it. Whereas in this era, you get to see Roman Reigns wrestle a 15-minute match on Raw most weeks.
Yeah, that's a topic for another day, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, not much else to say about this one. It's the first SummerSlam. It was a business success. Creatively, it was not so great, but it was enough to get them to come back again the next year. And we'll be covering the next year next week, SummerSlam 1989. What are you looking forward to talking about next week?
I am so goddamn excited to talk about Zeus. I am like reverberating with the desire to get into No Holds Barred and Zeus and fucking Tiny Lister. Devo from Friday is in a wrestling match against Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake.
The entire Zeus thing is, to me, one of the most bizarre and fascinating things they ever did.
Oh my god, so there's just so much to get into, but there's so much other crap too. Like, this is like the 1 year where Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard are in WWE and they're tearing it up.
We got a really good Warrior Rick Rude match.
We get to talk about how crappy the Red Rooster gimmick was.
Yep. Mr. Perfect is debuted by next year.
Oh my god, it's so good. And yet there's still going to be a whole bunch of crappy matches for us to complain about.
Yep. And terrible commentary. And guys who are having feuds not facing each other.
Will 1989 be the first year that SummerSlam has a decent main event?
We shall find out. I wouldn't bet on it because it involves Zeus and Brutus the fucking Barber.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what you got to look forward to next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you again next week.